All right, guys. Best Ball Bros, episode 2. Super, super pumped. Last week, obviously, we got to talk to Liam Murphy, who won Best Ball Mania 2 on Underdog Fantasy. This week, we're bringing in, I don't want to say, a more special guest, but for me, this is like one of the coolest things that I've ever done. Someone that I've known for a very, very, very long time, went to school with growing up. We even played high school football together, all of these fun things. And then as we all start to dive into this best ball world, poof, I call him Tony. He Felix is his name. We called him Tony back in the day. Tony Felix Castro wins $1 million, DraftKings Millionaire Maker, on an insane Monday Night Football Najee Harris sweat, and he wins $1 million, leading our old hometown to be, now we're crowning it the Midwest capital of best ball, small Mascoutah, Illinois. I'm super, super excited to have him on and just talk through this insane best ball season and his $1 million winning team and a whole lot more. Best Ball Bros, episode 2. Let's do it. Yeah, so we got to get this out of the way first. The first comment from Paul. I was confused by the title of the show because I've been calling you Tony. Obviously, your name on Twitter is Felix. We got to clear this up because I will never be able to say anything other than Tony on this entire show, and I don't want people to be confused.
So my full name is Hector Felix Anthony Castro, and I always went by Tony when I was growing up. So then I was like, but when I hit 21, I was like, why don't I go by one of my actual names? So I went by Felix after that. But
yeah, so just so crazy. We were talking a little bit before the show. You said it. I think we've been in you and I have been in classes together since the 5th grade, right? Since elementary school, and obviously have known each other for a very long time, and didn't even know really that each other were getting into this best ball space. And now we're here with you winning $1 million and everything. It's crazy.
I was sitting waiting I had jury duty, and I was just sitting there on my first morning, morning best ball draft, and I was going, E-Bond for how many E-Bond could there be? I went looking your Facebook, you didn't have anything on there, so I was like, oh, man, maybe it's on Twitter. And I was like, oh shoot, he's all up in this too. And I was like, okay.
That's hilarious. So let's do a little bit of kind of background and stuff first, and then we'll dive into, because your sweat story on Monday Night Football and everything is crazy, and we'll obviously talk more about just your overall kind of best ball summer and everything. But give the people a little bit of some background, not only just oh, hey, I'm Tony from XYZ, but how did you get into best ball? Is this your first time playing? Have you been maxing out contests? All that kind of stuff.
All right. So last year was the first year on DraftKings they had best ball. I definitely was into it, but I didn't have the cash value, I guess. So the amount of money I could put into it. So I did I maxed the 3. I got one into it. Into the second round, and I was out after that.
Yeah.
Well, this past May 29th, by the way, I was like, I'm not poor, but I'm not, rich. So I was side jobbing. I door dashed for a little while there to get a little extra cash so I can gamble it. Well, I hit a $50K on May 29th. So I put that $50K towards.
In what did you win? What did you win?
It was a 2-slate playoff basketball.
That is
split
amazing.
3 ways. Yeah. So I ended up getting $50K. So yeah, that was awesome. But then
that built your bankroll. That built your bankroll then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So my bankroll's set up nice, which I lost a bunch of it on week 1, but we won't talk about week 1. And so and every year before DraftKings was a thing, I used to draft 100, 125 ESPN lineups. And I'd just manage all of them. It was a pain to do that kind of stuff. So I was like, you know what? I got to give best ball another try. I'm not going to just give it up that easily. I know more than other people do, or at least you have to have that mindset that you do. So I went in.
So you've been playing fantasy for like you've been deep into not even just best ball, obviously, but you've been deep into fantasy football for a long time.
Yeah, like probably 2008.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't
just
realize
football mostly. You said you won. You said you won. DFS in NBA. Are you playing? Are you playing other sports as well, not just football?
Yeah. I mean, I play every sport. I play the daily dollar because I'm still, I have an addictive personality. I know I should keep my limit, down low, or else
Smart.
I'm gonna lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
I play the daily dollars of everything, and then I suck at everything. I'm actually really good at NASCAR. I don't know why.
Okay.
But I've won probably about 10, 12 big tournaments. But football is where my bread and butter is.
I was gonna say but football would be your favorite, your bread and butter. We see the Chargers. I think I remember that from back in the day. The Chargers thing. So you got to tell. So lifetime Chargers fan, or what's the Chargers?
I was born in San Diego, the real Charger area, and I don't want to talk about how this past week, but I actually grew up like kind of cheering for the 49ers and the Chargers, and then we got whooped in 94, I think it was. I couldn't cheer for the 49ers anymore. This
is funny. His Chargers garb is making me tilt all my playoff best ball. Have you drafted any of the playoff best ball, or have you taken a little break?
No,
since
I didn't touch the playoff because I was like, I know my Chargers team. Like, we're gonna choke this. This is not like we're not gonna make it. Like, I don't understand why everybody has high hopes for us to get to the playoffs.
I wish you would have told me that.
I didn't even touch it because I would have drafted Herbert all the way through every team.
Yeah,
just because I wanted them to go. Kind of like same with Liam drafting all Buffalo Bills. It seems like.
Right. Yeah, it has clearly worked out a little better for Liam being a Bills fan and being all in on the Bills than you. Now the Chargers were good for like the season-long best ball, but like you said, for the playoff stuff, if you would have went all in, the Chargers are like the most cursed team out there. So,
I have no faith in my Chargers.
Here's a good question. How much of the million would you give up for a Chargers Super Bowl? Like, obviously they're out of the playoffs, but say they had made the playoffs.
If they won the Super Bowl, I'd probably give $500K. If I give
so this is this is real fandom. This is like you're a huge fan.
We have never been, good. We had Phillip Rivers, but once we got rid of Marty, for no reason. We
14-2, right?
11-4 or whatever. I don't know, whatever it was, and we got rid of him. And it's like, what? So we went to North Turner. We had 2 good years, and just went straight downhill.
Yep. And hopefully for you, not like you need any more good luck, if we're being totally honest. But
I'm a Michigan fan too, so I'm like, I've had all these like good runs, and it's like just so close.
You need to, this has been a nice little run. Even if the Chargers and Michigan haven't gotten close, this has been a nice little run. So let's talk a little bit about this, like best ball summer or whatever. You talked about how you like kind of started to get into it last year, and then obviously you built your bankroll from some DFS stuff in the off season. Was that then like a big goal for you to like really go hard at these contests? And then were you focusing specifically on DraftKings or everywhere, or what was your like kind of drafting plan of attack?
So I hadn't even heard of Underdog right off the rip. I didn't know about them. And once I found you, then I found Underdog. But so I'll get that in a second. So my first thing is that I built I made my own ADP list because the DraftKings, I was like, well, everybody's going to be using the DraftKings ADP. So I was like, I went through every day and I made sure that it was like which players I actually wanted on there, which players. So one, I didn't get any, hurt players. I had way too many Michael Thomas's teams in general.
Yep.
So that sucked. But so I went through, I was huge on Derrick Henry. If I was at 1, I had to make a choice between CMC and Derrick Henry. So I made that stand. And then I had Cooper Kupp at like 2 rounds before everybody else had him. So I was huge on Kupp, and unfortunately I had 80 teams go from like advanced of the 150, which
80,
I know that
you had, hold on.
or 69.
80.
I had 80 teams, and 69 of them were the 150.
So out of 150 teams in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker, you advanced 80.
Yeah.
Oh, holy shit! That is absolutely incredible. So okay, we got to talk about that now. Just even if we come back to this, your drafting strategy.
Yeah.
In order to do that, you talked about the Derrick Henry stand. Cooper Kupp clearly was a very good stand. That
Jamar Chase.
So you were taking really strong stands on individual players.
Mm-hmm. And there's because I knew if I had my core, I could kind of spread off my core and in a different way. Like if I have a different player here, different player there. So I made my stand like 4 or 5 different players who I thought I had a bigger edge on, and then drafted differently off of those players.
So it was, let's just say Derrick Henry, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, a handful of guys that you made sure to get. Fournette was one of them too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
I've always been a Fournette fan. I was like, why does everybody shit on this guy? He played for the Jags, and everybody thought he was bad. Well, look at who the Jags. That's
true. That is true. Fournette was definitely. It's like a running joke now, right? Like I was not on Fournette, but
you got me on.
Literally the biggest whiff of my entire year was 100% Fournette. So you built a core out, right, of X amount of players, 4, 5, 6 players, and you went really hard after those guys. And it sounds pretty much, obviously Derrick Henry got hurt, but but he was in
then,
route.
Some of those teams got in.
I know you still probably, especially because if you had Fournette and Kupp and Chase on them, you had like monster teams, and then you diversified everybody else outside of that core. Okay,
except for Colin Johnson. I mean, I had him way too. I'm talking about 90% of my leagues. I had him I had so much of Colin Johnson. I believe in that man. He doesn't believe as much as I believe in him.
Colin Johnson's parents don't believe in him as much as you believe in him.
I'm talking about 130, maybe
130 Colin Johnson teams. So what we have learned is same thing.
Taking stands are not perfect.
And what we have learned last week, like with Liam, is even when he totally whiffed on things, like you whiffed on Colin Johnson, you won the $1 million. So ultimately, people should feel vindicated that you hit like everything else. So if they liked Colin Johnson, I'm saying this because I liked Colin Johnson. So we're totally on the same page with that. And
I still think he's a good player. I don't understand the Giants at all.
This is also
Kenny Golladay, no touchdowns.
The Giants. I mean, just totally collapsed, right? So it didn't really matter who you had on the Giants. Obviously, when you can ruin Saquon and all that, they are clearly a total disaster. Okay, so you also mentioned you had you kind of built your bankroll in May, mid-May, I think it was. May. Okay, so end of May. Did you just kind of spread out your drafts over the entire summer, or did you really try to go hard early, or how'd you approach that?
So I did one every morning. The morning. I feel like there was an edge doing one in the mornings because there's always maybe 1, maybe 2 people that weren't paying attention as much. Fastball drafts, and then when I was with my kids, I'd start up a slow draft. So I probably had 60 slow drafts of the 150. I don't know which one was. I don't know if that was a slow draft or fast draft, but.
Yeah. So do you think you did, kind of basically spread throughout the entire, you were just every morning you're doing
and once they started to get closer to the end, I definitely ramped up a bunch of slow drafts just because I didn't want to not get it maxed out.
You wanted to make sure that you had 150. Yeah. Did you play in any of the other contests on DraftKings or on any of the other sites, or did you literally only focus on DraftKings?
I ended up doing 11 on Underdog and advanced 5 of 11 on there.
Jesus.
Yeah. Again, my stands are pretty good, and I didn't change it, and these people are I just don't understand why they don't see what I see. Jamar Chase can catch a football. Did anybody else see him in college?
I know. Here's a good question. Paul wants to know, do you know when, I know you don't know if it was fast or slow. No idea when that one, when the winner took place.
I'm assuming probably preseason week 1 or 2 because of Damian Williams looked pretty good in and he was definitely on that team.
I'm going to share my screen really quick and we can look at the team while we're talking about it. Here's a screenshot if you can't see it. Tom Brady, Najee Harris, Devin Singletary, Jamar Chase. Good God. Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Rob Gronkowski, and Mike Williams was what made the starting lineup on DraftKings. And
By the
how
way,
many
this is
total?
my weakest team in my eyes.
So you thought that how many teams did you get through to the final?
Just one.
So this
I had 8. That week 16, whatever one, like after the first set of playoffs, like when the first round of the playoffs just killed me. I went from 80 to 13.
Wow.
And this team barely made it into the finals. Like I had stronger teams but they just didn't outscore the people who had T. Higgins and Joe Burrow.
Yep. Right. And so that is so interesting because the first round, right, was the Bucks disaster game, right? The first round of the playoffs was all the
Jared Goff everybody out from that day.
See, I mean, what a crazy Jared, the Jared Goffs of the world come in and save these teams, right? Because Tom Brady, it wasn't his fault, right? All the receivers got hurt, tough matchup or whatever, to sneak this team through, and then just so happens to get to the championship. And like you said, wasn't even you think your strongest team.
100% was not my strongest team. I was like, well, we might have a shot to, maybe eke, the $1,500 prize up, which is like 150th or whatever.
Yeah. So let's talk about I'm trying to see if you have oh, here we go. Oh, this was so here's another team. This is actually a good reference point. This was before the final, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was like my high scoring team going into the playoffs.
Going into the playoffs, you had a different highest scoring team, right? Yeah. That goes in.
That team was absurd, by the way.
I mean, look at this. Josh Allen with Eckler and JT, the two best running backs. Kupp, obviously. Chase, Lazard, Claypool with Fant. Let's see what we got here. Burrow on the bench, Gabe Davis, Marvin Jones, Nico, Cole Kmet, Damian Harris, and Michael Carter.
Yeah.
Wow. And even Wentz was good. Tony had some games. Yeah, I mean, this team is just absolutely.
I slaughtered that league by like 500 points.
And so that's what's great. That is something. I'll ask you about the playoffs, like kind of at the end of this, like the format of the playoffs and everything like that. But that is something that's like super interesting to me, right? That I want to think more about this offseason is like literally you, the person who won the Millionaire Maker on DraftKings, is showing. This was my highest scoring team, right? And all of us, because we don't have a better way to evaluate it during the season, we're just like looking at what our highest scoring teams are.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
But like when you get to the playoffs, like you said, you advanced 1 million teams, and this was your best one, air quotes best.
Going into it, yeah.
Going into it, right? And what you believe to be one of your worst teams is what actually wins it.
It had, but my worst team, or that team that won it, had Zach Wilson and a stack with Elijah Moore, a Detroit stack. I was like, this is, and Robert Tonyan was hurt all year, so I'm like,
so it basically needed Gronk all year at tight end. It had two borderline useless stacks all year, right? Zach Wilson and Elijah Moore, and Goff and Amon-Ra were useless basically all year. Obviously, Amon-Ra came in clutch, and so did Goff. Came in clutch for you in the playoffs, but had like, you just had your core right on that team, and Najee was good enough. So that is so fascinating. Do you have any though, like takeaways, right? So you advanced an insane rate. You had some of these really good teams that died. You had one of your kind of worst teams that wins $1 million. What, like, kind of between all of that, was there anything that you're like, I feel really strongly about this for next year, or maybe I feel like really bad about something that I did or other people are doing? Just kind of general takeaways from what just happened to you.
As I know, Liam and I are looking at it differently. I think having a high advance rate is good because you never know what team is going to be good in the playoffs. I mean, the Detroit stack won me that first week of the playoffs.
Yep.
And I would have never thought, hey, that Detroit team is going to be pretty good that 1 week. So I think having a higher advance rate is nice because, and to do that, I think you need to have like a stand on a couple good wide receivers that other people don't. and I think you need to have at least one bell cow running back. You don't have to go running back. You don't have to go, running back receiver. You can go receiver and get 2 good running backs. You just need one solid running back, I think.
Do you think that that is? Do you think that is? You were extremely heavily focused on DraftKings, and that was actually something that I found interesting on DK, where in theory, right, the PPR format 20 rounds sets up really well for like 0 RB. But the DraftKings, better than anybody, right? You were grinding it every morning, and you maxed out these contests. But the DraftKings rooms were so soft, right? Sometimes you're talking about Jamar Chase. Like we talked about Jamar Chase slipping on Underdog to the 5th. I mean, there were times Jamar Chase has fallen to the 6th, 7th round. Yeah,
I mean, not my draft really typically very often.
Yeah, because you were taking them.
But yeah, because one round I took like a Jerry Jeudy, and I was like, oh man, I'm not going to get Chase this round. I'm like, we'll see. And he would fall to the next round. I'm like, well, obviously.
Yeah, and so, but do you think that the running back thing, ironically, right, the scoring is maybe a little bit better for wide receivers, but the fact that the DraftKings rooms were like really soft on wide receiver, do you think that that's a big part of it?
Because I feel like I could find better value on the wide receivers, 100% easier on DraftKings. The receiver room, because I ended up doing a couple drafts with you, because that was one after I found Underdog, whatever. I did I did the one with you and Evan Silva, I think his name is.
Yep.
The big dog.
Yeah, the big dog.
I mean, the receivers at the end of that were just complete.
So bad. Yeah. I think we drafted Scotty Miller on that team. I think we got that's how bad.
You go so hard, be heavy, and I'm like, man, he doesn't understand.
I know exactly, but that's the point, right? On Underdog, that was a very different thing versus you obviously crushed DK, and we would joke all the time about like, dude, I know this guy didn't work out, but like in the Spike Week Discord, we would joke about like, I can get Will Fuller in like the 12th round. He goes in the 7th round on Underdog. So like I can take, right? You had Najee Harris on the team. I had a
bunch of Dolphin stacks too, which didn't obviously pan out as well as I thought, but
Waddle and Gesicki.
I had a lot of Waddle.
Waddle and Gesicki were really good. So it kind of worked out.
Having a bunch of rookies, not as bad as you would think either. That's something you could take away. I hit on a bunch of good rookies in general, like Carter. Like on the other team, I had Carter and I think a couple other rookies. But I think like you shouldn't be afraid to draft rookies based on reports. Like you kind of put me on to Trey Lance, and I'm glad I caught on late because he wasn't there.
Yeah, but good old Trey Lance. That's a memory I'm trying to forget, and I can't wait already. Like I just am already seeing 3 months from now when we start drafting again for next year. Like Jimmy G, Kyle Pitts. We're gonna do the same guy. We're gonna do all the same guys again, and it's gonna be miserable. So you talked about. I wanted to ask you about. You talked about because I tend to agree with you that I do think it's like a running bit on Twitter or whatever, kind of like back and forth on, should you worry about advance rate or should you worry about winning? When in reality, like the answer is both. I want to advance.
You want a team that can win, but you don't want to sacrifice an advance rate, in my opinion. Because I feel
go ahead.
You give yourself a better chance to win it all if you advance, but you also want to have that's what I was trying to say. Like if you have like a core and it advances, you have a better chance to get the right people in the right spots
around it.
Yeah.
So do you think that
core helps the advance rate and the winning rate?
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Is you obviously took a really aggressive approach on a few players. Do you think that is something that can help your advance rate? Obviously, if Cooper Kupp, it is interesting because Derrick Henry did get hurt, but it's like if Cooper Kupp had gotten hurt, if maybe Lenny didn't pan out or something like that, do you think that you would still be able to have a good enough advance rate because you diversified elsewhere? Or do you think that you think that you're trying to thread that needle with that core and finding an advance rate? I'm just trying to think through the core thing because I agree with that for sure.
Had Cooper gotten hurt, I was done. There's no way. I don't think. I mean, I had some other good plays, but I don't think I'm winning the million. If you know what I mean? Like you had to have Kupp in general. Yes. I think you have to have your core players. And those core players have to do well, or else you're not. I mean. But you have to I just think I listen to Pat Mayo, which, not not the greatest, but he's entertaining. But you make
Pat's
a good
awesome.
point. Draft good players. Like it's not hard. Like
It
you
is
kind of know which
that is
players
such
are
a
good.
funny thing that like it sounds like, oh haha, like good joke, right? But in reality, like when we like even like looking back at this season, it was kind of like we
Yeah.
know Cooper Kupp is good. He just has been
Yeah.
tied to Jared Goff, right?
Yeah.
We know Derrick Henry is good at football. We know Jamar Chase is like one of the best
Good at
receiver
football.
prospects we've ever seen, right? We know Debo Samuel. Look at Debo. Like
Yeah, I
there
had
was
him on a
never a
couple teams.
question
Yeah.
on there was no question on is Debo Samuel good at football? Like everyone's like, fuck yeah, this dude is good at football. He's awesome at football. It's just he hasn't been healthy, played with some crappy quarterbacks, blah, blah, blah. And like, yes, there's the like, is this guy going to get opportunity? Of course, that gets like weighed in. But the reason why like the Mike Davises and stuff of the world fail is because
He's not a
like
good player.
he's fine, like he's an NFL football player, but
Yeah,
like
he's an NFL player. He's just a guy.
But he's just a guy, right? Exactly. And so that is actually something that I've been thinking quite a bit about. And was that a part of your
Jonathan Harkins or Hakins or whatever his name was, the backup supposedly for Mike Davis? That was a mistake.
Javian Hawkins, who got cut, oh boy.
I had like 4 or 5 shares of him. I'm like, what a waste.
Yes. So all right, we talked about this core, right? What were like your biggest misses? Not necessarily just on your core or whatever, but like your biggest misses, things that I'm not saying that you like regret, but like things that you just like totally got wrong.
Well, Colin Johnson,
yeah.
I really didn't have any bad teams. I had made one fun team. I'll say this: it's not going to work. Don't draft completely all rookies. I went through and drafted all rookies from every team.
Was there that? So Najee, I'm trying to think of who this would even be. Did it have to be Najee?
So I started with Najee. I think it was Pitts. Okay. I went through. I drafted every rookie. Like I was like, okay, it was a $3 draft. I was like, whatever. And
just to see
over somebody else's league.
Yeah, just to see if it works, right? What the hell? It was worth $3.
It got 9th place.
If it would have won, it would have been well worth the $3.
It would have been legendary.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally that's what the people ask me, like, why did you go so heavy at Darrington Evans? Like, you're the one that talks about like, we don't need to draft 45% of the late round guy. I'm like, because I have a goddamn brand to uphold, and I want to have a screenshot at the end of the year when Darrington Evans is the winning guy, right? I'm trying to like it'd be worth it.
I would say you guys were talking about it the other day. Drafting running backs that will be like the main running back if somebody ahead of them gets hurt. I think that the Darrington. I think that was a great idea. It's not. I feel like that would be another mistake because I had too many like Chris Evanses who should be a part-time back or stuff like that.
I like
too many part-time
backs,
not solid running backs.
So that's something you feel like that's been
because I had no medicine. Zero.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something like I've thought about. That's definitely something I've seen other people talking about. Josh Norris and Hayden Winks talks about it on the Underdog show. Even like people in our Discord, that's been something that people have really kind of felt passionately about as a takeaway from the season. That like instead of taking James White and Giovanni Bernard, now obviously they mostly got hurt, so like it's kind of it's easy to say in hindsight, but taking Madison and right, Pollard and those backups, right, like exactly like you outlined. So Rashad Penny, right? Rashad Penny is like the perfect example.
Right. I didn't think he was going to play it all this year, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. I did. Well, and he barely
had a bunch of Chris Carson.
He barely did, finally, he got his chance. In like, it was like week 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he had like a 20-yard carry on the first play. And he got,
this is a good.
And he gets hurt, of course. But you think that that's something for next year that you're going to do a little bit more of, like a little less of the James Whites and a little bit more of the Alexander Madisons?
I don't know if I can go Alexander. It's just the ADP is so high, and I feel like that's probably usually when I'm drafting like a Waddle or somebody I value a little bit more, like someone I feel like could have spike weeks and take over a league or like a week or so. I can't take my backup running back so early. I feel there's got to be like other people like later on in the drafts that'll do it. I just picked Madison. Like, what was it? Like the 9th or 10th or whatever it was. It was too early for me.
He was definitely it was very interesting to me on Madison and some other guys like him that he was much more expensive on DraftKings. Like he was really cheap on Underdog, and that's why there was so much allure. His game also fits Underdog so much better, right? And then now he did catch passes, but those kinds of guys, that's another perfect thing I wanted to ask. I'm glad you brought that up.
What a bunch of cheaper Hubbard, by the way. Bunch of cheaper Hubbard.
There's Chuba was a cheaper your point, was a cheaper version of Madison, right? Backing up the freaking 101 and goes in the 17th round or whatever. You said you didn't do a lot of Paul nails it. I mean, DK, it is so interesting. DK was so thirsty for running backs that it pulled up like everybody, absolutely everybody
got drafts too, man. I tell you what,
and people are bad.
Some people just didn't know what they're doing. I like Pat Mahomes first round. I'm like, you can easily get him in the second. No one's trying to get your Pat Mahomes at pick 5, man.
Yeah, I know. It really was wild. And do you think that, like you said, you did some underdog drafts, right?
Yeah.
Did you notice like that huge, crazy, stark difference between the two? And was that 100%. Why you focused more on DraftKings?
Well, I only started the underdog probably like a week and a half before, so I would have probably had. I don't know if I would have maxed out any, but I definitely would have done more. And now I can, probably max out both.
Yeah, so perfect. That's a good segue. What are your plans like for next year? Are you going to continue to like? Is best ball going to be a thing that you're like?
Best ball is going to probably just be my main thing. I mean, I also do DFS, but like I'm probably going to go into the weeds of like because the ADP is going to be completely different next year, obviously, and it's like how like I'm trying to figure out how early we can get into this so I can see what the ADPs are going to be, and I want to get to the DraftKings list to see how I can affect it because I feel like a lot of it, almost everything came down to like changing the draft order out, their ADP or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
their queue. Because
you had to do it manually,
everybody's
right?
just like looking at those 5-6 players that were next on the board. You know what I mean? Like everybody's doing that. I mean, there's not really going to be much variance.
And so you kind of took advantage of that by literally, by the end of it, you probably knew it off the top of your head, right? But just like who your guys were, and putting together that rankings and physically putting it into DraftKings, like for every draft, is that kind of what you're referencing? Because like, you couldn't on Underdog, I can just like run a CSV and upload it on there and it's in all my drafts, but you can't do that on DraftKings, right? They don't make it very easy for you.
No. If they did, I didn't know how. I just went through every morning. I would do it myself.
So you talked about the every morning thing, and I do really think actually the more people I've talked to, like you, like Liam last week,
I think Davis does it too.
Davis and I talked about it. I do actually kind of think that getting up and I was doing it right. I get up and work out and take care of the dogs and all that good stuff. Yeah, you work early, you got kids and stuff, so you're definitely up early. And the drafts are going to fill. And I mean, next year is probably just going to be batshit insane. Like, I mean, I can't. It's hard for me to think about what next year is going to look like after this year. But do you think the morning thing is like one of your if we're putting a top 5 things that you think probably
don't draft at night either? There's a lot more sharp people. And you're probably tired yourself. Don't draft at night.
That is true. You get home from work and you think, oh, I'm just going to do a draft. But you're tired and your competition is better. And the competition, they may not be tired.
Right.
What about fast versus slow? Do you prefer the fast?
I was listening to Liam. I'm like, yeah, like he's a problem solver. So that's the person I'm trying to avoid. Yeah. I don't want. By the way, I went against Chess is okay, which apparently he does 80 hours a week or something. He was in like 15 of my drafts. I'm like, I didn't know about this guy until the Lowell's podcast with him, and I'm like, I looked at him, I'm like, this guy's in all my leagues. By the way, stomped him.
Yeah,
a bunch of Boston Scott.
Yeah, he had Boston Scott. So you should have put in 81 hours to avoid the.
I should have told. I put in 82 hours on this.
Yeah. That is
it was
so
nice.
Good. Okay.
Did you have DK? Any in DK the playoffs?
I did.
know.
I
Okay.
maxed the Millie and the
Okay.
$3 and did some of the other stuff. And
Did you like the chat feature?
No, I hated
Oh
it.
man,
I
I was
don't
talking
like.
so much shit on the.
Well, you can when
the
you
playoffs.
advance.
You could talk
When
shit
you have the
on the
highest
playoff
advance rate, the highest advance rate on the planet. So yeah, of course you were talking shit. Your core was literally all the best fantasy players that existed this year.
There's a guy in your chat that was there in like one of my leagues though. He was in front of me at one point. I think it starts with an S. I can't remember it. But I saw his little spike logo. I think I messaged you on Twitter like saying I want one of your logos so I could put it on there. But I'm just repping Osimo. But
hey, Osimo is a reputable company.
I get to go meet Alex.
Yeah. We'll get you so that's another perfect segue. We'll get you a custom one for the million. We'll get $1 million badge with the Spike Week with it. Yeah. Exactly. So you talked about like you said, you get to go meet Alex Baker, Osimo, because winning the DK, winning $1 million, any of the kind of like
the
championships,
champions,
if you will. Yeah, you go to the Tournament of Champions, which is next month, right?
It's like in 2 weeks.
Oh Jesus, that is coming up fast.
Fast turnaround. I had to message the lady or the people over at DraftKings like, "Hey, am I going to this? Like, am I invited?" Like, because I know it's coming up. Like, some guy said he'll see me in Arizona or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so a really cool perk of the DraftKings thing, right, is you get an entry into this Tournament of Champions, and it is what is the contest that you play for the Tournament of Champions?
Okay, so it's a two game slate. It's gonna be the AFC NFC Championship games.
Okay. Which
I kind of just had to figure out whenever. Like, I was like, well, when's the date? And she said, this day. I'm like, okay, so that's probably what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Pretty sure that's what it is.
That makes sense. Well, your first bink was in a 2-game NBA slate, and then
that was my second. That was my second bink. I got one 2 years ago. Cooper. There's another reason why I'm big on Cooper Kupp. He won me my first 50K.
Okay.
It was a Jared Goff and the Rams versus the Tampa Bay stack.
I remember.
It was a single. It was like I had a single stack on the Rams side and a double. I had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and they just was like 46-50 or whatever.
I remember that game. That was also one of my better. That is so funny.
The $3.
That was one of my bigger DFS days of my life. I thought I was basically dead that day because I believe we're really getting back into the old school. This was before Jonathan Taylor. Marlon Mack was the Colts running back. Yeah. He was facing the Raiders in the early, so the Rams Bucks game that you were talking about was in the afternoon, and Marlon Mack was in the early games. I believe he scored 2 fantasy points against the Raiders, and I only had afternoon guys besides him. And so, but I was like, I didn't really care. And like, you get 2 points from your 6K running back. It's pretty much over. But I had done this basically the same thing that you did, Godwin, Kupp. I forget who did they have Deshaun Jackson or Cooks at the time? Brandon Cooks, I think, was on the team. Yeah. I just totally stacked that game up, right? Yeah. And same thing as you, it goes absolutely nuclear. Another reason why Chris Godwin is one of my favorite players. I think he had like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half. Yeah. And so same thing. That was my mini version of your Millionaire Maker.
I lost it by like 2 points, and it was like right at the very end. I saw they threw it to the white guy, and I was like, "Oh, Cooper Kupp." No, it was Tyler Higbee.
Higbee. Yep. So that was your first big sweat. We got to talk about this sweat from this week because I know that you were like lurking, right? Your team was doing good. Obviously, we just showed it with I can find it again, kind of where you were sitting after Sunday, and let me pull it up really quick. Right? Yeah. So you're in the top 10. You're in the top 10 with you had Najee. Did you say you had Najee?
I had Najee, Chubb, and Peoples.
And okay, so you had Najee, Chubb, and DPJ. Obviously, all these wide receivers and tight end scores were counting, and Devin Singletary was counting. Who do you remember?
My secondary, I had Gaskins at my second running back position. So I was like 2 points. I'm like, okay, so they're pretty much going to start scoring immediately.
Yeah. Okay. So, and do you remember how many points you were behind first?
22.4. 0.4? Like,
so you needed 24 plus, and then obviously whatever, the people in between you could make up.
Nobody was
some
ahead of
ground.
me could really do anything because they had players in front of them that had, a certain amount of points. I'm like, I'm pretty much free in front of me.
So you really just needed one of Najee or Chubb to get, let's just call it 30, 25 or 30 fantasy points. And you're watching this Monday Night Football game, and it was
atrocious Monday Night Football game. It was so bad. I was standing up the entire time, though.
Yeah, so
how throwing the ball. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Neither of you guys should be throwing it. You guys are both terrible.
And it is really funny because, normally we're like, oh, these teams need to stop running or whatever. But neither team was having, Baker was.
Every ball was getting batted down. I'm like, what are you guys doing throwing the ball?
So bad. And then Ben's
throw by Ben Roethlisberger is 1 yard in front of him. And I'm like, you got all the way down to the goal line like 3 times. And it's just like, let's pass it. Let's pass it. Like, how'd you guys get there? You gave it to Najee. Like,
and the crazy thing is the Steelers have been a horrible running team all year, right? Najee is getting 2 or 3 yards a carry every week. This week, he's finally he's crushing. He had a bunch of good runs. He was averaging 8 yards a carry, but they just kept throwing and throwing and throwing. So during the game, I don't remember exactly how Najee's fantasy points were looking throughout the game. How were you feeling?
A big run, 30 yards, and that kind of vaulted me to 4th place, I think it was. I was like,
at what point in the game was that?
I think it was the second quarter.
Okay.
But between first place and second place, it was a 12-point difference or something. It was something he had a pretty big lead. So I was like, if I get, because I'm pretty sure I was going to catch up to Herzig, who was sitting at second at the time.
Second, yep.
So I was pretty sure I was going to catch him pretty easily. I mean, as long as one of them had a decent game. I wasn't expecting a 20, 30-point game, obviously, but I was like, if he puts up a certain amount of points, I should get second. $250K, I'm okay with that. I've always gotten second. I've never actually had first to myself before on a big because on the other 50K, I tied it 3 ways. It was $100K at the top price. So I was like, you know what, $250K, I could pay off my house. I don't have to worry about anything. And and then they could have just kneeled the ball. I mean, I know the other team had timeouts, but they were underneath 2 minutes. The other team might have just let them, and he ran the ball. And I already given up defeat. I did not even think that they were going to, run the ball or anything. So I'll sit on the couch, okay, we're $250K, taxes, and all this other stuff. I'm like, and then they ran the ball. I was like, huh. And then they ran it again. I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's third down. They're not going to get anywhere. And then he breaks that tackle, and it's green grass. I didn't even know if he would score. I didn't, I don't even think I was going to win it at that point. And I'm like, I'm a millionaire. Screw around my room. I lost my glasses. I jumped up and I swung my head. I looked to look at my wife. My glasses flew off my face. Now I'm just running around my house, just screaming. And my wife, cool as a cucumber, did not blink, did not anything. I think she was waiting for it to hit the account. I think first.
She wanted to be 100% certain.
100%, because there was a couple years ago, there was an Arizona versus Green Bay game, and I forget the white guy, Kumaro or somebody, got a huge touchdown pass against the Cardinals to tie it up and to tie the game up. And I thought I had won $2,000, a dollar tournament or whatever. And turns out that they're going overtime, and Larry Fitzgerald ruined all that.
So she's jaded.
Experienced my don't get happy too early.
Yeah, so that's really funny because I've been lucky enough to have some good days, and mostly in DFS and stuff for several years now, and I've been with my wife for a long time. And one of the first times, after I had started to have some success, that I had a real big sweat, she was watching it with me. We're down in the basement. She's sweating it with me. She's like, what do you need? Which players do I have to root for? Blah, blah, blah. And I actually don't remember the exact specifics, but the player I needed got ejected from the game or something like that when she's watching it with me. So from then on, it was if I have a sweat, I will tell you that my team is doing well, and we're not allowed to be in the same. And we're not allowed to be in the same. So like that's what she even is like. Don't tell. She's like, just don't tell me. Like I got to go to the
it's the same
DK
way.
like football live final, NFL live final this
Yeah,
year.
you got
whatever,
all these finals, man. It's impressive.
Yeah, I do it.
And you only
that's
do like
something
one or three teams, don't you?
Yeah. 1 to 3 teams, like smaller field type stuff. And I've been able to, for some reason, just kind of have success in like the qualifiers and stuff. And so,
yeah, it's impressive, man. I play occasionally with those, and I'm just like, I get like third to last place. I'm like, okay, probably not for me.
It's painful because, it's obviously basically winner take all, right? It's basically winner take all in these contests. And then, getting like you said, getting third to last is actually really not that bad because you were probably doing something super contrarian, which is what you have to do in the winner take all contest. But
I'm either first or I'm last. It's not. I'm not cashing anything, man. I'm first or last.
Well, we have definitely figured out that you are first in the best ball contests.
By the way, okay, so to start it before I even got to ninth place, I was in Austin that weekend, thinking I might have a team or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We were sitting on the airplane tarmac for about 4 hours, like as soon as the game started, and I'm watching. I can barely get to like a little bit of reception. I'm watching 8-pixel football on my phone. I got Red Zone on. I'm like, oh man. Here we go. And I'm like, was that Jamar Chase? I hope so. I think I see an orange person running. And
so you were literally you were on your phone just sitting on the tarmac, sweating out.
Our pilot hadn't gotten there yet, apparently.
And then you had to fly home still?
Yeah, so like I missed my rise. I was on the plane. I was probably 107th or 119th or something like that. And then all of a sudden I get back and I'm like 14th or 9th. I was like somewhere between that 14th. I was already 10th because I was at 4th place right before the night games.
You were in 4th before the night games because in the afternoon, right? You had Singletary went nuts. Amon-Ra went nuts. Gronk was really good, and tight end. Gronk was the highest scoring tight end, right? Which was really important.
Yeah.
For obviously Mark Andrews being so popular. And then
I had a lot of Mark Andrews, by the way. That was
of course you did. Of course you did.
I made sure I had 3 tight ends.
Okay.
I don't know. I had to have 3 tight ends because I had a lot of Irv Smith Jr. So that kind of like ended up working out for a lot of my teams. But I had a lot of Higbee, Andrews. I didn't have any Waller. I had a little bit of Kelsey, but I made sure I had 3 like elite tight ends, and I had a bunch of Dawson Knox because I didn't understand. I don't understand the hate that was on Dawson Knox. Like, yeah, he went to a catch specialist. That means he's going to try to catch the ball better. Like, I mean, he knows his problem. He's trying to figure it out.
That was one of my favorite offseason reports, though, was Dawson Knox, and that professional football player whose job is to catch the ball went to a hand-eye coordination specialist. Like, hey, how do you get a job as a hand-eye coordination specialist?
I don't know, man. I want that job.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But trust me, I talk about fantasy football for a living, but I think hand-eye coordination specialist might be more ridiculous than that. But I agree that the Dawson Knox thing is kind of same. Like, I guess maybe we didn't know that he was a good football player, but we definitely knew he was a good athlete. That's a fact. And he's on the Bills, right? Was that like a perk, do you think, of that situation?
I definitely having Josh. But Josh Allen, like, maybe I was seeing it differently, but like the first playoff game or second playoff game against the Texans, I think it was, he targeted Knox a whole bunch. It was the same with Davis. Like, they just targeted him, those 2 players, like a lot more than you would think they did. And I didn't really get enough Stephon Diggs, even though I liked him a bunch. But I didn't think he was a first rounder.
Yeah,
I thought I think he was more of a second round pick. I think
he had that season in him, right? Stephon Diggs somewhere in the range of outcomes was Stephon Diggs doing like maybe what Devontae Adams did this year or something. But also what we just saw was probably like, the 30% off.
Diggs, he needs somebody else to pop the top off, and that was John Brown. But Emmanuel Sanders is not popping anybody's top. Like, he's not that guy.
Yeah, and it is kind of interesting because I like that take actually, because he was really smashing when John Brown was there, but he wasn't getting the like red zone and end zone looks. This year, he got those red zone and end zone looks. I think I saw a tweet. I don't remember who it was from, so I apologize for not sourcing it. But he had like 20 red zone, like end zone targets last year, and this year he had like 35 or something. So I mean, he took, he almost doubled it. But like you said, he caught so many like 4-yard passes this year.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have anybody else to, right? I really like Gabe Davis. He's really good.
Yeah.
And you know, but
those are my stacks. He was one of my lower stacks. Like I also try to stack. I think stacking is just intelligent in DFS and general. Because I had a Detroit stack that wasn't really a Detroit stack when I got it. It was Josh Reynolds. Oh, because he was on the Titans, and I ended up having him in on my Felixs Brown in the same team. But like I had the Buck stack, I had the Detroit stack, I had a Jet stack. Like I feel like stacking or having at least a 2 stack. It doesn't even have to be like your quarterback with your receivers. Like even though that's what mine ended up being, but I think just having a 2-team stack, like as many of those as you can, because it's usually not like 3 people that pop off. It's usually like just 2. Like on the playmaker side.
Yeah. Like well, you know, we'd call them like secondary stacks or something. That was something that we tried to do too.
I had a lot of Gabe Davis and Dawson Knox stacks is what I was
Knox, I mean, geez, that is like seriously like an absolutely perfect one, right? Because we know that offense is going to be good, and we know that Stephon Diggs is amazing. No one's I think trust.
No one's saying he's a bad player. Yeah, he's a good player.
They're going to throw so much, and sometimes it's just the other guys that score, right? And if you're getting it from the 18th round and the 14th round or whatever, you know, whatever those guys cost, and you're getting like elite production from there because maybe Diggs isn't having the monster game, like that's perfect. That's the perfect secondary stack.
I feel like living in St. Louis let us see that because Mark's offense, Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt were amazing, but also Akeem and Brandon Mono, whatever you say his name.
Ricky Prohl, Ernie Conwell.
I just remember those other guys also doing really well and killing everybody else.
Akeem is one of my favorite NFL players. When people say like, "Who's your obscure NFL player that you know you will always remember?" And mine is Akeem because of exactly what you just said. He was the 3rd wide receiver on the, but like perfect correlation to like this Bills thing, right? It's like he was the 3rd wide receiver on the best offense in the NFL. He's a sick athlete. Yep. Also, like one of my favorite things was if you played Madden, you had to have Akeem on your team because he was like a 98 speed. Or whatever,
and
you know, back in
it's crazy, for sure. Yeah,
he was awesome, but he would just have those games where it's like, look, they doubled Torrey Holt on the outside this game, so Akeem catches 2 long touchdowns, right? And Gabe Davis can do that, you know, like you said, the tight end or whatever. The offense is focused around the other players, but when you're just in a good offense and you're on the field and you're a good football player too. Like that creates all this upside, and I think the Bills, like that's such a perfect example of that. I liked it too with we saw it come through with like the Packers. MVS had a bunch of weeks. Alan Lazard had weeks. Obviously AJ Dillon also came through. But just like you're like, dude, I know this offense is good.
Yeah, it's like right? That's why I had Tunyon. I was like, I just want a piece. I want a piece of the Packers. Like, drafting good players on good teams is also a smart idea. Now, I can't say that was perfect because obviously I had, you know, the Jets and the Lions on the same team, but you know, occasionally some slip through. Again, that team barely won. I had to have Devontae Parker not score anything that previous week. That team only scored 160 points in the 3rd round of the playoffs or 2nd round of the playoffs.
Only 160.
Yeah,
that had to be one of the lowest scoring teams.
100%. That's why I was like, I had no optimism. I was like, I don't need to watch the games. I'm probably not going to win because that team was trash. My high scoring team was like 100, like 205 points, and I lost. I was like, I don't understand how this is possible. The guy had everything on it. Like he had scored 240 or 250 or whatever it was.
Oh my gosh! But you got him in the end. That's all that. That's all.
So really think about it. We got to the same place and I beat you.
Yeah. With you scored 160 on this team.
Yeah.
He scored 240, and you took home the million. We're closing in on coming up on the end, but you mentioned a couple of things that I thought were good that I wanted to bring up to you and ask you about. You said like, oh, I know I want to target the good football players on good teams and stuff. And trust me, I totally agree. But then you were like, well, I had Lions and Jet stacks. However, those Lions and Jet stacks were with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Elijah Moore. Two things that you've talked about today. One, they're rookies, which we know about the potential value and upside of rookies. And we're fairly confident that they're good at the game, right? Yeah. So they kind of cover both of those things. Like, is rookies, you talked about, like, you even did a draft with like all rookies just to kind of play around. Yeah. But like, are the rookies and young players a big thing for you that you're really trying to hone in on?
Okay, so before I wanted to do anything with my life, I wanted to become an NFL scout. Like when we were playing football, and yep. I wanted to be an NFL scout. You have to know people. I don't know anybody, so I do it at home.
You might now. You might start to know people now. You just won $1 million.
Yeah, well, I still don't think I have the great connections for that, but we'll see. My pension plan is pretty good at my job. But yeah, so I've been player evaluating people. The draft is my favorite day of the year. The NFL draft is literally the first 2 rounds are my favorite. The third round, they do a bad production, and I just do my own self scouting.
It's so bad. They could do so much better, I think, for the later rounds.
That third day is just terrible, and I can't watch it. So I just write down the play. I used to write down every single player. Went back before you had the internet, and I used to write down every single player, and I'm like, okay, that player's pretty good. Like, he's in a pretty good spot to get touches and carries. That's another thing. It's like evaluating if they're ever going to get a shot to get on the field, because Michael Carter, he was technically third on the bench, but I believed in his talent, just like Jamar Chase. Like, he is not going to be able to not catch the ball. He's going to catch the ball.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what these people are thinking. He is better than every corner out there.
Amon-Ra too, right? Like,
yeah,
he looks pretty good, and obviously has a clear. I mean, who the hell was stopping him from getting on the field? Nobody.
I'm telling you right now, Colin Johnson is an amazing player. They just haven't used him. He's like Mike Williams and Vincent Jackson put together. That's my player profile for him.
I'm still keeping a candle on.
I lowered his ADP. I will tell you that much. I drafted him at 200.
I agree, Lundar. I'm still a football guy at heart. I do a lot of, obviously, game theory and all of that, and construction and strategy talk and all of that. But I will always still be a football guy at heart. So I like hearing, and Liam talked a lot about this too, right? He drafted 60% Gabe Davis. 60%, and like a shitload of Bills.
I don't know my percentage on Gabe Davis. It was definitely not as much as Colin Johnson.
But he was doing the same thing as you, right? Like taking a stand. And so we've done 2 of these now with 2.
By the way, Liam is way smarter than me. That man's on another level. I'm using my eyes, and he's using his brain. That's the big difference.
But you both employed really similar strategies to achieve a goal that has led you both to winning $1 million. And so when you start to like that's like mine like, sirens are going off in my head when I'm listening to you talk, because Liam said all the same shit basically, that you're not, it's not a 1-for-1. You don't have everything the same. But
I'd love to do a draft with us 3.
There you go. I don't want to do that. You guys both just crushed everything. I'm sitting here like, my bet we cracked the top 10.
Pick his brain while he's drafting, though, man. Yeah. I want to pick his. I would love to do a draft with him.
But I loved hearing like look, I'm taking stands on, and you can arrive at where you're taking stands on in different ways, right? You arrive at them in the way that is best for you, and clearly that worked out. And like Lundar says, like, you have taken the time to understand and know the players, and you took the stands on the spots that you think were the best for you from an individual player, team, right? You've talked about all of this football stuff that I think is so good, that sometimes we do get lost in like not to make fun of the spreadsheet thing, but like we do get lost in the data and the game theory and all of that.
I think people like you also kind of sway people's decisions, because you had me on Trey Lance. All of a sudden, I'm like, I don't like their situation. I don't know why I'm on Trey Lance, but you got me on CD too, because I was on a lot of CD on my team. So I mean, you win some, you lose some. You know,
You
like
win
that's just
some.
the whole thing.
Yeah. You win some, you lose some. Kyle Pitts was very close.
I had some Kyle Pitts, but not as much as you. I'll tell you that much.
I was going to ask you about who were there any other guys that you were super high on or drafted a ton of that like we kind of haven't mentioned either on the good or the bad side?
Well, I had a bunch of CEH were out the rip. Like he was my second round. Because I had a lot of drafts where I was the first pick, and I had a lot of drafts where I was like the end of the draft or end of the back order. And every time I would get CMC, I'd pair him up with CEH.
Yep.
Those are terrible teams. So
yes.
So, and I didn't, because everybody kept saying like he's going to be a top 5 rusher because of the way that the Chiefs ran their offense, and I was like, yeah. Then I switched it to having a bunch of CD and Justin Jefferson, which it turned out pretty good. But those, I guess, I didn't do well. I didn't see those.
Well, the turn. It's crazy because the turn teams just so. The team that Peter and I drafted that made a run in Best Ball Mania was a 102 team, but we took Devontae Adams second overall, and then we took wide receivers at the 2-3 turn. But those turn teams, because like obviously McCaffrey, colossal bust. Dalvin was not good. Derrick Henry was good until he got hurt, and so it's like Kamara was not very good, right? Zeke was not very good.
I had zero Kamara. I had zero Dalvin Cook.
You're one of the a few people that I've talked to now today, so people that I respect that have mentioned that they were out on Kamara. So I also
the Kamara thing was that the quarterback, like Drew Brees. I mean, as a Chargers fan, I saw he'd always check it down to Darren Sproles, and I'm like, I know that was a thing for him. It's not a thing for Jameis. Jameis always likes to go down the field, and
definitely not for Taysom. Yeah,
and Taysom had his best. He had his best game with Taysom, but it wasn't by passes.
Yeah,
and I didn't think their team would be any better. I figured everybody would just stack the box against. So it didn't make any sense for that. And then I always think Dalvin Cook's always going to get hurt. Sorry, I don't know.
And he did, and he did. But this was awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Like I'm also just like so happy for you when I saw that you won.
If you ever need a guest, I am 100%.
We will do some drafts and stuff in this coming off season for sure. 100%. I'll bring you back on and we'll do some. Obviously you're the DK king, so we'll do some DK.
I get 1 year as the being the champ.
Now you got to repeat. Good luck, by the way.
People can see me in their lobbies and they're like, "Oh, we got to draft harder now." Like,
good luck.
I took the Underdog Draft today, and it got sniped the entire time, and I was like, "Okay, well, thanks."
Good luck replicating. I mean, everything that you like outlined is seriously one of the sickest best ball years I've ever. Obviously, it culminating in $1 million is huge, but just crushing literally everything. Right, your player selection, your portfolio, your advance rate, just everything was an absolute smash. And like, I'm so happy for you. Obviously, I'm biased because I've known you for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you're my quarterback, man.
Yeah, exactly. Tony played offensive line and defensive line, and I played quarterback and moved to running back. But Hollis
got hurt that last year. You played that last year. I don't forget anything.
Now we're reminiscing. We're going down memory lane, but
we can go down that a different day.
Yeah, exactly. But like seriously, so pumped for you. Just awesome. I guess before we wrap up, what I didn't ask is what are we buying? What are we doing? What's the splurge thing? What's the
retiring my wife? And then I might get a dog.
Oh man, you're really playing to your audience now. My wife will love this. She'll listen and she'll be like, "Oh my god, yeah, this guy."
Well, I want an Australian Shepherd. That's what I want.
That is absolutely amazing. What a perfect answer and what a perfect way to wrap this up. Getting a dog again. Congrats to Tony. A sick finish. An unreal sweat. Like I can't even imagine what your emotions.
It was the worst.
Like.
It was the worst.
I cannot even imagine what your emotions were like that night. But this was a ton of fun. Thank you again for coming on, and we'll definitely have you back on to do some drafts and stuff this off season. But that'll wrap us up for tonight. So for me and for Tony and for his future dog and for his very, very happy wife now, we will see you guys next week.